the new show on the channel, Bitcoin Explained Simply. If you hear a little background noise, well, actually a lot of background noise. I'm sitting outside. I am traveling. I am a nomad. And currently I'm in Miami visiting family. Normally I'm coming to you from Mexico, where I have a home base. Today I'm in Miami, and I'm sitting outside of a cafe. So you may hear sound, you may hear birds in the distance, and I have on my earphones. So hopefully this will be a really, really, really good and clear audio for you. Bitcoin Explained Simply, you're on the show, and these new videos are released Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Now, sometimes I'm a little behind that only because sometimes, getting that video done. So I apologize if it's been a few minutes after 8, but it'll be somewhere in the 8 p.m. hour. So tonight, what are we talking about? We're talking about Bitcoin mining. So you will understand the basics of mining. You're going to understand exactly what it is that mining is all about. And then you are going to be able to spot shit coins. You're going to understand why to buy Bitcoin. You're going to understand why to hodl Bitcoin. You're going to understand why Bitcoin is the only one on the entire coin market cap of thousands and thousands and thousands of tokens that has done what it has done. And you will understand why Bitcoin's valuation is so far above and why Bitcoin dominance is still outstanding. Let's get into it. So, what are we going to talk about in this conversation? You and we're going to talk about proof of work. We're going to talk about security. We're going to talk about halving, the difficulty adjustment, and we're going to wrap up with lies. Oh, there's a plane overhead. Yeah, I'm not far from the airport in Miami. We're going to talk about lies. What lies are we referring to? We're talking about the lies that they spread about Bitcoin, and we'll talk about that at the end. So stay all the way to the end. Now, first of all, with regard to Bitcoin, remember, this is a network. And remember that we've spoken in the previous episodes. If you have not watched the previous episodes, watch the previous episodes so that you can understand exactly where we are now. This is Bitcoin Explained Simply, and you understand by now that Bitcoin is 4 things as we talk about it in this series. Bitcoin is a network, Bitcoin is a technology, Bitcoin as an asset, and Bitcoin as a currency. We refer to them all in different manners and different respects. So tonight we're talking more about, in this episode, we're talking more about the network and the technology. Now, what is Bitcoin mining at its very core? At its very core, it is math. This is something very interesting and very fascinating to understand. At its very core, Bitcoin mining is nothing but math. This is Bitcoin Explained Simply. We don't want to make this overly complex. This is going to be a very short and to the point video, and it's also going to be very simple. What is the math? Well, it's 2 things. One, the first thing that the miners must do is they must do the transactions. So remember, in earlier episodes, we talked about Susie sending Jeff 1 Bitcoin, and Susie had 10 Bitcoin. She sends Jeff 1 Bitcoin. She has 9 Bitcoin left, right? That's the transaction data we're talking about. Bitcoins are flying all over the world. Different people are sending different things to different people all over the world. People are buying and selling and trading all over the world. So the math has to be done to see where are all the Bitcoins right now and who owns what. And that's done about every 10 minutes. We'll talk more about that in a moment. So the first thing that the miners are doing, the first kind of math, is that they are doing all the transactions to secure the network. The second thing that they're doing is they have to be the first to guess a number. Now, there's a lot of miners all over the place, right? So let's go back to our former network, and you see, could be lots of miners all over the world, different places. And what are all these miners doing? They have huge computers, right? Computing. We'll talk about the energy usage a little later in this video. At the end, we will address that energy FUD. So they have computers all over the world, and these computers are calculating these transactions. But when you have all these different miners, just because they got the transactions correct doesn't mean that they're the one to get the reward. Yes, there's a reward involved, and we'll go to that in a moment. In order for them to complete the math, they have to be the first to guess a number, a hash number. It's like a little puzzle piece that they have to solve. And they need a computer to crunch all different, keep guessing all kind of different numbers to get this number, sort of like a lottery win. And if they guess the number first, they have to have both pieces. They have to have the transaction data all together. And so in other words, they have to have already done the math of who sent what where, right? The addition, subtraction, all of that, all the stuff we learned in middle school, right? Elementary school and middle school. Then they have to be the first to guess the number. Now, what happens when they do that? Well, when they have, what is this called? Before we go to what they get, what is this called? This is called proof of work. You know how when you were in middle school and you're or junior high school and you were learning division, long form division, or maybe you were in elementary school learning long form division. I remember the teacher used to say, show your work. You would have to divide like 32 into 1,319. And the teacher would say, show your work. So she or he or they, whomever they were, looking at your calculations could tell if you had grasped and accurately got the answer by the proper processes. You can't just guess the answer and say, hey, I got it. You have to follow the rules. And as we know, Bitcoin has consensus rules. So you have to follow the protocol. You can't just guess the right answer. You have to go through the means, do it by means of how it's set out in the protocol. So we call this whole experience proof of work. Proof of work. It means, hey, I did the math, you can see it, and I did it according to the rules of the network. And now here and I'm the first to win this block, and I guess the number. Well, who would do all that work? And why would anyone do all that work? It takes a lot of work to do that. Just like it takes a lot of work to mine gold, it takes a lot of work to mine Bitcoin. That's why we call it hard money. If you didn't see episode 1 in this series, I encourage you to go back to episode 1 in this series and look at money. What does money mean? What is it? Understand money, and then you'll understand Bitcoin. Most people don't understand Bitcoin because they don't even understand money. So you're kind of handicapped on both counts. So let's talk about these rewards. Why would somebody buy computers, find a place to put the computers, run the computers all day long, and do all this work to try to come up with the answer to the math problems, the 2 math problems? Because you get rewards. Well, what are the rewards for doing this? Well, one reward that you get, or the rewards that come from Bitcoin, I will say that there's a couple of ways miners are compensated. They're compensated by rewards, block rewards, and they're also compensated by transaction fees. But right now, we're not going to talk about transaction fees right now. First, we're going to talk about the rewards. So the reward, what's the reward? Well, if you are the one that guesses the 2 math problems correctly, well, the first one is not a guess. You just have to do math. The second one is a hashing issue. You have to keep hashing the computers until you come up with the right number. Well, if you do that first, you win a reward. And the reward is 6.25 Bitcoin. Now, that is a value as of today's price of Bitcoin in USD. Remember, 1 Bitcoin is 1 Bitcoin, so it doesn't really matter what the price is in USD. However, we will say, just so you have a frame of reference, that 1 USD, well, 1 Bitcoin right now is worth about 33,000 USD. I checked it as I did this. It's like 32,900 and some odd dollars. So I rounded it up to $33,000. So if we take 6.25 times 33,000, we arrive at 107,250. So what is that? That is the reward every 10 minutes that goes to the miner, which could be a whole group of people. It doesn't have to be one person. It could be a group of people that goes to the miners who got both aspects of this whole computation right. They did the transaction data according to the rules, according to the protocol, according to the consensus mechanism. And they guessed that special number through the hashing. They solved the problem, right? They solved the math problem, and then they solved the hashing problem. Well, they were the first one to do it. They should get paid for that, right? Because that was a lot of work. Well, you do get rewards. You get 6.25 Bitcoin, which is currently about $107,000 USD. Now, let's talk about the halving. And you may need to watch this video over and over and over again so that you can really understand everything that's going on in this video, because these are simple concepts, yet it's a lot. It's a lot to digest when it comes to Bitcoin. And that's probably why there's only 100 million people in the whole world on Bitcoin. And we would love all 7.5 billion people to be somehow connected to Bitcoin, which they will be eventually. We are literally changing the world. Let's talk about halving. Well, every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin rewards that we just talked about, you're going to get some rewards because you solved the problem. You're going to get 6.25 Bitcoin rewards. Well, where does that 6.25 Bitcoin come from? They're born. They're popped out of the Bitcoin blockchain. Well, not out of the blockchain. They're popped out of the Bitcoin protocol like a big mama giving birth to 6.25 babies. So 6.25 Bitcoin pop out. Just like if you were mining and you found a new treasure trove of gold, let's say you found the mother lode. Wow, you walked into the cave, you were hacking away. You guys were drilling. And then you found this huge deposit of gold. Same thing. You're doing this math problem. It's just that computers are doing it rather than people. So there's doing the math problem, doing the math problem, and voila, we have 6.25 new Bitcoin. Well, these 6.25 new Bitcoin every 10 minutes is the reward. So whoever solves the problem every 10 minutes gets the reward, which means different people get the rewards. Everybody doesn't get the reward, and the same person doesn't keep getting the reward. It's whomever does the work gets the reward, and whoever does the work first, right? So can you see that there are incentives built into Bitcoin? One of the incentives built into Bitcoin is to be accurate and fast, because that's how you get paid. You want to look at what people do? Look at the incentives. Now, what is a halving? A halving means that every 4 years, the number of new Bitcoin that are born every 10 minutes gets cut in half. Now, meditate on that for a moment. That ought to make your ears perk up. What do we have? A reducing and diminishing supply. If you read books like, what's this book, The Bitcoin Standard, you'll understand the stock to flow model, and you'll understand also in economics. And we don't have to be economics people to understand this simple equation. Scarcity equals value. Scarcity. Well, Bitcoin is even beyond scarcity. Bitcoin is finite. Now gold is scarce. Yet, Bitcoin is finite. So what happens with this halving situation? Now, this halving, well, let's look at this halving. Every 4 years, this is built into the software, the number of new Bitcoin that pop out every 10 minutes will be cut in half. So when Bitcoin was first introduced in the white paper 2008 on Halloween 2008, then the block reward was 50 Bitcoin. So when the Genesis block was mined in January of 2009, that means the very, very first time that it was actually done. So the white paper says, hey guys, this is how we can do it. And then in January 2009, they actually did it. Satoshi actually did it. He mined the first Bitcoin and 50 Bitcoin popped out. Whee, 50 Bitcoin. The problem was they were worthless because nobody knew anything about them. And the network effect had not kicked in yet. We'll do another show later in the series about the network effect. But the network effect hadn't kicked in yet. 50 Bitcoin, it was as useless as a piece of paper sitting on your table. Okay, 4 years later, we have another halving. instead of 50 Bitcoin popping out every 10 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 10 minutes, only 25 Bitcoin popped out every 10 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 10 minutes. Then we had another halving in 2016. That's why Bitcoin just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Because in 2016, we had another halving, and we had that halving. The Bitcoin reward every 10 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 10 minutes to whomever solves the problems first went from $25, cut again in half to 12.5. I don't mean $25, 25 Bitcoin. Cut again in 2020 to 6.25 Bitcoin. And as I record this now, we're in 2021. So that means that there are 6.25 Bitcoin popping out every 10 minutes out of their mom's Bitcoin belly, birthed out of the Bitcoin belly, right? Every 10 minutes, 6.25 Bitcoin worth approximately, let's go back and see what we're approximately worth about $107,250, assuming once again a USD price of $33,000. So you can understand that this halving mechanism, and when is the next halving? The next halving is in 2024. Approximately, okay, approximately. It's going to be cut in half again. No more will 6.25 Bitcoin pop out every 10 minutes out of their mother's belly. It's only going to be 3.125 Bitcoin then. Whoa, and it's going to get really scarce. All the way up to what? All the way up to, this mechanism is going to continue for about another 100 years until I think it's 2140, somewhere around there. Well, the last Bitcoin will pop out, and that will be 21 million Bitcoin. That is all we will ever have. And that is a hard stop. 21 million Bitcoin. So once the last Bitcoin is mined, which will be about another 100 years into the future, there will be no more mining of Bitcoin because we'll have all the Bitcoin. 21 million Bitcoins only. Now, I think there's 42 million millionaires in the world. There are not even enough Bitcoin for each millionaire on the planet to have one whole Bitcoin. So if you have one whole Bitcoin, you are ahead of pretty much the whole world. Well, you're already ahead of pretty much the whole world if you listen to this video, because only 100 million people are on Bitcoin, 150 million. We haven't even cracked a billion yet. And there are 7.5 billion people in the world. And there is everyone in some way, shape, or form's life will be touched by Bitcoin, whether it's the base protocol, the actual Bitcoin itself, or some layer 2 or 3 solutions built on top of Bitcoin. Everyone will be touched by Bitcoin sometime in the future. Now, 21 million Bitcoin, Val, that's all. That's it. It will never be any more. So what do we have here? Go back to my very first video in this series with the Yappies Raystone. And that Yappies Raystone was what we call hard money. Bitcoin is hard money. It's hard to make. It's hard to produce a Bitcoin because of proof of work. And it has a hard cap. 21 million, never will be any more. That is it. That ought to make you jump up and do a jig right now, because the Federal Reserve, as of the time of this recording, is continually printing money, deflating and devaluing the currency, which not a problem, because guess what? We have Bitcoin. Well, because everybody on the planet certainly can't have one Bitcoin. It's too scarce for that and too finite. I don't want to say too finite. That's not proper grammar. It's finite. Because it's finite and everyone on the planet can't even have one, we do have good news. One Bitcoin is divisible into 100 million Satoshis. So just like the US dollar is divisible into 100 pennies, same thing with Bitcoin, is divisible. Yay, it's divisible. So we can take one Bitcoin and we could cut it into 100. I was starting to say 21 million again. Each of the 21 million Bitcoin can be cut into 100 million pieces. And one of those 100 million pieces would be called a Satoshi. So when you hear us talking about stacking sats and buying sats, SATS, those are Satoshis. And if you want to understand how to be a Satoshi millionaire, it's a simple way to do it. You just look at the Bitcoin price right now, which is right now about $33,000. So let's go back in USD. Okay. We're just measuring it by USD. So if you look at the Bitcoin price of $33,000 and you cut off the last two zeros, that would give you $330. For $330, you could buy 1,000,000 Satoshis and you would be a Satoshi millionaire. Just a consideration. If you want to make yourself a Satoshi millionaire, it's pretty easy to do. You can have millions of Satoshis, even if you don't have millions of Bitcoin. It's all good. Get in where you fit in. Some people will have millions of Bitcoin, and some people will have millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, and some people will have millions of Satoshis. It's all good. Now, let's talk about, before we go into the lies, let's talk about the difficulty adjustment. What is the difficulty adjustment? This is just ingenious because Bitcoin has a built-in mechanism that makes it, I call it, a living, breathing entity with a heartbeat every 10 minutes. It adjusts itself every 2016 blocks. Every 2016 blocks, Bitcoin has what we call a difficulty adjustment. What does that mean? It means that whether we have one miner mining Bitcoin and securing the network, or 100 miners mining Bitcoin and securing the network, or 1,000 miners mining Bitcoin, doing the math equations and securing the network, Bitcoin doesn't care because it's going to adjust itself to be harder or easier to do the math problem every 2016 blocks. So remember how we talked about the math problem. You got to solve this math problem. Well, if a lot of people are solving the problem and they're solving the problem and they're solving the problem, let's say a lot of people are solving problems, very competitive, then Bitcoin will keep making it harder to solve the problem. But now let's say China bans Bitcoin, like what just happened. Not bans Bitcoin. They tried that before. That didn't work. China banned mining of Bitcoin in China. And so the Chinese miners had to quickly pack up their mining rigs, right? Quickly, because it happened like pretty suddenly. Well, they had to quickly pack up all their stuff and get all their stuff out of China. That could mean, since there was a lot of mining done in China, let's say a third of the Bitcoin mining was happening in China. Well, it doesn't matter because every 2016 blocks, Bitcoin is going to adjust itself to be harder to figure out the two math problems or easier to figure out the two math problems. Is that ingenious or what? That means that if there is 1,000, let's say there's 1,000 people doing this math, doing the math. There's a lot of computers doing the math. Bitcoin is going to make it a little bit harder, or it may stay status quo to figure it out. So to make all these computers earn their keep. But now let's say something happens like Bitcoin mining banned in China, and a third of the miners all of a sudden are offline. In other words, a whole third of all the computers that were doing all this solving of these two problems are gone all of a sudden. No worries. Bitcoin adjusts itself down to be easier to do the work because there's fewer computers doing it. Have you ever seen anything like that before? Have you ever seen a technology that is actually a living, breathing, responsive entity to whatever is happening? That's Bitcoin. There is no other. See, I pray, I hope, I don't want to say I pray. I hope my intention is that when you understand these things about Bitcoin, you will be like, oh, hell no with them shit coins. They ain't getting my money because they are not earning your money. I'm telling you, they're not earning your money. Bitcoin is earning your money every 10 minutes. So when I tell you that Bitcoin is a living, breathing entity, I am equating it to a living, breathing entity because it is responsive to itself and to what is happening in itself. We could almost say that Bitcoin is self-aware. Isn't that interesting? Just to have those kinds of thoughts. Bitcoin on some level is self-aware. It knows how many people are doing the math problem and it adjusts itself based on it. So that no matter if there's, remember what we said, one miner or 100 miners or 1,000 miners, 10,000 miners, a million miners, Bitcoin doesn't care. Wow. Now, let's go to the lies. And I'm going to tell you a couple of stories about the lies, and then we're going to wrap up. All these lies. Bitcoin is boiling the oceans. Oh my God, Bitcoin is causing all of this horrible excess waste, this e-waste. Oh, they're throwing away all of these machines that they don't use anymore. Oh, it's using so much energy. Please know that this is what we call energy FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's what FUD stands for, F-U-D. And I also want to tell you a couple of stories about any time humanity has made a change from a analog system, as Michael Saylor put it, or I believe there was someone else I was listening to that was speaking about this. Anytime humanity has made a change from an analog system to a digital system, this was the same argument, and the argument has never won. So let's go to when email first came out. The Postmaster General in the United States literally went to court to try to stop email and also try to get a tax on each email because he said the exact same thing. Oh, this is horrible. All this email is just using too much energy going from computer to computer to computer. Let us bring it to you instead, paper in the mail. Paper mail that has to be cut down trees, print the paper, make the paper, print the paper, buy the paper, print on the paper, make envelopes, send that all around the mail on trucks that are running gas, emitting emissions. That's better than email. Now that was the actual argument. That was actually an argument from the Postmaster General. And he had a lot of support on that argument. Okay, let's go to another example. These are lies. And I'm going to give you an understanding of how you can put all these lies to bed. Because you can always put lies to bed. It's not hard to put lies to bed. It's called facts. It's called truth. Next. When we went from, let me ask you a question. We already determined that it's better to have email than the post office. It's just better. Okay? Let's go to the other example of elevators. Elevators used to be human powered. Then they went to electrical elevators, and the people that were invested, because remember, there's always people that are invested in the old technology and they will fight for survival. But they're going to become dinosaurs. I mean, why fight for survival when you just jump to the new thing? But remember, all their systems are invested, their systems and their minds are all invested in the old system. So that's why they fight for the old system. I haven't met anybody yet that has been able to stop progress. It's just better. So when the elevators went from being human powered to being powered by electricity, of course, there was the conversation, oh, MG, this is too much electricity being used for these elevators. We shouldn't have this advanced in elevators. But can I ask you a question? Have you gone into any building and seen a human powered elevator? Okay, let's go to another example. Do you remember there used to be the Pony Express? They would, even before the Postmaster General, the Pony Express would run across the country on horses and trains to carry the mail. Do we have the Pony Express anymore? Do we have fax machines anymore? No, because we have something better. But I will tell you, people who are invested in the old system, they will fight tooth and nail. They will garner support. They will get their constituents and they will spread lies. Never underestimate a dying system. And that's how you know a system is dying. To me, it's the actual sign that a system is dying when it starts lying, because that means it's fighting for its survival. If we were just telling the truth, it would be simple to see which is better. Well, when someone starts to lie and shout and shriek, you know they're dying, because that's what they have to resort to. And clutch and scream. And that's all you hear now. Oh my God, Bitcoin is just too much energy, energy, energy. So here's what my solution is for that. Don't believe and don't trust. Verify. You see, it's very simple to verify how much energy. That's the homework assignment I'm going to give you because I looked it up and I saw it for myself. Don't believe. Don't believe what I'm telling you. I don't need believers. Bitcoin doesn't need believers. Don't believe what we're telling you. Don't believe the media. Don't believe anything. And don't trust. Don't trust me. Don't trust the media. Don't trust Michael Saylor. Don't trust anybody. That is our ethos in Bitcoin. Don't trust, verify.